Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago I released a video about stacking Explosive Light with Argent Ordnance, and what a potent combination the two could be. But judging by the comments that I got on that video, even though I did briefly touch on it, there still seemed to be a good bit of confusion as to why and how damage buffs stack. So allow me to attempt to clarify the matter a bit further. And let me preface this by saying, this information is not available anywhere in the game. Bungie, even though I love Destiny 2 and the world that they've created, they've done a terrible job of informing the players as to how damage increases actually work. So unless you're someone actively searching for this information online, or you're doing your own personal testing, you might not be in the know. And that is perfectly fine, and by no means your fault. Anyone who says that it is, they can go straight to hell. I don't tolerate bullying, belittling, or general bullshit in my day-to-day life, and I am certainly not going to put up with it on this channel. I do my best to make Ironworker Gaming a safe and welcoming place for guardians of all skill and investment levels. And if a bad actor happens to pop up in the comments section, I do what I can to make sure that we never hear from them again. And sorry for getting a little bit off topic, but I did need to get that off my chest. But onto the damage buffs. If you're someone who's caught any of my weapon review videos, you've undoubtedly heard me talk about weapon-bound damage buffs, external damage buffs, and target debuffs. I don't know if that's the official terminology or not, that's how I've always kept them straight in my head. A weapon-bound damage buff is a means of achieving a damage increase through the weapon's perks or from its intrinsic trait. These are things like Rampage, Kill Clip, Swashbuckler, Vorpal Weapon, Frenzy, and in the case of an exotic, something like Memento Mori from Ace of Spades. They all offer varying degrees of percentage damage increases and are realized in different ways, but they are all weapon-bound damage buffs. Also lumped in here, we could put our spec mods. Minor spec, major spec, or boss spec. And yes, spec mods, when paired with a weapon-bound damage buff, will result in increased damage. We're going to be using the Adored Sniper for a lot of this testing. An Adored versus Carl, at base, hits for 19,830 points of damage. When we put on a major spec, the damage moves up to 21,371. That's a 7.77% damage increase. Taking the major spec off and applying Vorpal Weapon, we see 22,805 points of damage. That's a 15% damage increase. When both are working together, 24,577 points of damage are dealt, a 24% damage increase. And let me finish my rundown about stacking damage buffs, and then we'll talk about how to calculate the damage increase. On to what I've always referred to as external damage buffs. These can generally be applied through class abilities, intrinsic traits on exotic armor pieces, or combat style mods. A few examples: a Warlock's Empowering Rift, a Titan's Inertia Override, Weapons of Light from a Titan Bubble, Firewalker from Path of Burning Steps, Absorption Cells from Mantle of Battle Harmony, High Energy Fire, or Argent Ordnance, just to name a few. Again, all of these are activated in their own separate manner and offer varying damage increases. And one external damage buff will stack with our weapon-bound buffs. So let's go back to Carl. We've established that Adored with Vorpal Weapon and a major spec crits for 24,577. Say we're running High Energy Fire and throw its 20% damage increase into the mix. We're now registering 29,492, an additional 20% more damage, and up 49% from the damage of a base crit. But two external damage buffs will not compound. If you have High Energy Fire up and active and then drop an Empowering Rift, which also grants a 20% damage increase, you can see that the crit damage here versus Carl is unchanged because you can only have one external buff boosting your damage at a time. That being said though, in the case where you are affected by two external buffs simultaneously, the game by default will give you the higher damage increase. Example, the Empowering Rift damage increase is 20%. Well of Radiance provides a 25% damage increase. So dropping a Rift while standing in a well will not net you any more damage. It's going to be overridden by the well's damage increase. 1. You get one external damage buff applied at a time. We are going to be able to make use of a target debuff also though. These effects are going to lower the damage resistance of a specific target, resulting in increased damage being dealt. We've seen a few debuffing mods in the seasonal artifact as of late, in the form of Breach and Clear, and currently Particle Deconstruction. But an exotic weapon, like Tractor Cannon, or class abilities like a Hunter's Tether or a Titan's Hammer Strike, do carry an ever-present way to debuff an enemy target. And like I said, these debuffs will further compound with any damage buffs that we have rolling already. We'll visit Carl again and build on our already established numbers. After applying the debuff with Tractor Cannon, we can now score 38,340, 30% more damage than the previously established value, and now 93% more damage than our base bare bones crit. Something to keep in mind though, like our external damage buffs, 2 debuffs will not compound. So if you see that a target is under the effect of one already, there is no need to apply another one. Save it until the effect wears off, and then reapply. So, general rule of thumb for maximizing your damage stacking efficiency. 1 weapon bound damage buff with an applicable spec, 1 external damage buff, and 1 target debuff. But, there are a few rule breakers lurking about. The most notable and universally applicable is Font of Might. This activates when picking up an elemental well. It gives a 25% damage increase to weapons matching that well's elemental affinity. This buff seems to completely ignore the damage stacking rules, boosting the damage output of anything that we have worked in already. So, versus Carl, we have our major spec, our high energy fire, and our Vorpal weapon piled up already. I pick up an arc well, activating the damage boost, debuff Carl with tractor cannon. Now crits from Adored are scoring 47,924 points of damage, showing an additional 25% damage increase, and a whopping 141% damage increase from the base damage of a crit. And while this mod can be a bit situational due to the buff's time constraints, it still is a way to significantly increase our damage output for a short amount of time. And I know I went through all that pretty fast, just because I didn't want this to be an excessively long video. If you have any additional questions on why or what damage buffs stack, feel free to comment down below, and maybe me or one of your fellow Guardians could help you out. But on to calculating your damage increase. You can figure this out without physically needing to run the numbers in-game. And honestly, it's not terribly difficult to do. But there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. In the previous demonstration, we ended up seeing a 141% damage increase in total. If you simply add up the percentages, you're going to notice a discontinuity. We have 7.7% from major spec, we have 15% from Vorpal weapon, 20% from high energy fire, a 30% debuff from tractor cannon, and a 25% buff from Font of Might. Adding all those up, we're looking at 97.7%. This is obviously the wrong way to do it because the numbers don't line up. First thing that we need to do is fix these percentages so that they can be calculated as damage multipliers. And this is really pretty simple. Put a 1 in front of them and a decimal point directly behind the 1. So for major spec with its 7.7% damage increase, it would be 1.077. Vorpal weapon with its 15% damage increase would be 1.15. Convert all the numbers and you'll end up with a set that looks like this. Step 2, rotate those plus signs 45 degrees. Because these numbers don't get added, they get multiplied. Step 3, do the math. Multiply all those numbers together, and in this case, we'll come up with 2.42 and some change. Lastly, take this number and multiply it by 19,830, which was our base crit versus Carl. We'll come up with 47,988, really stinking close to the actual in-game damage. And it's only showing slightly higher because I did do some number rounding as we went through things, just for simplicity's sake. And that's the procedure, that's how it's done. That's all you need to do. You can calculate it in the exact same manner for any set of buffs or debuffs that you want to take into account. And for any additional information on buffs, debuffs, or damage increases, I'm going to point you toward Court's spreadsheet. Find the link in the description or in the pinned comment. This is a phenomenal resource that he created for the Destiny community. There is a ton of absolutely fantastic, accurate, up-to-date, and well-organized information in here. It's really worth checking out if you have additional questions, or if you're someone who wants to deepen your understanding on the subject matter of buffs and debuffs. But hey, if you did enjoy this video and found it useful or helpful in any way, please remember to leave it a like, and consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel for more Destiny 2 content presented by yours truly. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this video. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.